I'm Jessica Denson, host of Lights On with Jessica Denson. Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington, otherwise known as CREW, has been doing vital work to expose the corruption and combat the abuses of power by Donald Trump for years now. They are committed now more than ever to staying in that fight. It is my great pleasure, as always, to welcome back Noah Bookbinder, president for CREW. Noah, welcome back to Lights On.
Thanks so much for having me.
My pleasure. I want to bring up, I feel like I want to do this in every show that I do, and that is to remind people that in the 30s in Germany, Hitler could not have succeeded without the assistance of lawyers and judges in dismantling the rule of law. I pulled up an article recently that reminded me of this, and I think it's very important because I feel like we're starting to see capitulation already in places like the special counsel's prosecutions of Donald Trump, where they appear to be wrapping up. It really, really, really is so essential to not obey in advance and to stick to the rule of law in times like this. Is it not?
It absolutely is. I mean, I think that one of the reasons that Donald Trump ever had a chance to run for president again is that institution after institution kind of stepped aside and figured that somebody else would remove the threat. That was what happened when the Senate didn't vote to convict him, even though more than 2/3 of senators had said that he had responsibility. But then so many of them, like Mitch McConnell, came out and said, well, he's leaving. It's not a problem. We don't need to do this. And they stepped aside. And the Supreme Court has repeatedly stepped aside. They did in our Colorado 14th Amendment case, where essentially what they said is, we don't want to do this. People would be mad if we did this. And they found a sort of legal jurisdictional basis for getting out of it without really considering the question. And they had a similar kind of approach in the immunity decision, where they sort of made up law essentially to avoid a conflict with Donald Trump. And, we've seen that kind of thing again and again. And, so it went to the voters and the voters did what they did. But at this point, the legal system and the people in government not acting in some kind of, deep state plot kind of way, but just doing their jobs and following their oaths and the law is one of the few checks that we have remaining. And so I do think people need to be willing to stand up to Donald Trump. They need to be willing to hold him accountable. I think we have to all be working to try to help people to do that safely, because I think people do have genuine concerns. I sympathize with where Jack Smith is, that, Jack Smith, I think, looks at this and says the Department of Justice policy is they don't prosecute sitting presidents. We've never thought that was right on the law. And I think it's even less right when it's a prosecution that started before he was president this time around. But that is the Department of Justice's policy. And beyond that, Donald Trump could fire Jack Smith and have the cases dismissed. So Jack Smith looks at this and says, this is where it's going anyway. I might as well get out of there and sort of avoid a crisis and protect my team. And that is a perfectly rational response. It's really hard to fault him with that, but it does send this very unfortunate message that essentially if you win, then you're immune from the law. And if you challenge, if you take an aggressive and sort of threatening approach, then you're immune from the law. And that is really unfortunate. I don't know that there's a lot that can be done to save those prosecutions. But I do think going forward, it's going to be really crucial that lawyers and judges and government employees not look at that and say, the next time Donald Trump violates the law, there's nothing we can do about it and we have to let him get away with it, because that's when it gets really dangerous.
The way Professor Tribe put it is that Jack Smith should absolutely make Donald Trump take the hit of firing him, and that retreating in advance is, quote, abdication of the worst kind. So, I have to say, Noah, I'm right there with Professor Tribe, because I feel like you cannot accommodate, anything in advance of. There's no reason why this prosecution should not continue. We think about all of the time all of us collectively have spent reminding the American people how dangerous and deadly January 6th was. What a violation. I mean, Donald Trump was charged with conspiracy against rights. That is the rights of the American people. And to just fold this investigation in advance because of practicality, to me seems like very much the wrong thing to do. But anyway, forgive me for going on about this.
No, I think, look, it is, in terms of harm to democracy, it's hard to imagine a more serious offense than trying to install yourself in power after losing an election and using a violent mob to do that. So the idea that Donald Trump could do that and then essentially walk away without consequences is appalling. I do think there is real value in making Donald Trump actually do the thing, making him fire that team. I think feeling some empathy for Jack Smith, because I think that is a scary place to be. I think he has responsibility for those people. And I think he may also feel like his chance of getting, I hope that he is going to put a report out before he leaves, and his chance of getting that out is better if he does that and leaves than if he stays in. But it's a really dangerous precedent. So I hear you on that.
Yeah. Let's take that segue. You talked about releasing whatever report he has before Donald Trump takes power. I did want to focus very much with you today on what can be done right now in these couple of months that we have, these precious couple of months where good faith public servants are still in positions of power. Can you kind of tell us any places where you see opportunities for absolute maximum transparency, and what people like Jack Smith or the Biden administration, anybody right now, can do to maximize transparency?
So I think one of the things that you can do that they cannot reverse is release information.
Yeah.
And so I think radical transparency is really, really important. And, that means, releasing information about investigations during both during the Trump administration and the Biden administration, means releasing information about a lot of kinds of decisions that were made, so we can see, so that there is, frankly, protection for those decisions that were made properly, and there is exposure for decisions that may not have been made properly, as a way to try to prevent against that kind of thing in the future. And so I do think that just getting a lot of information out to the American people about what happened under Donald Trump, and also what happened under people other than Donald Trump, so that can't be manipulated going forward. That is one huge step. I'm actually optimistic that there will be some progress in that area. I hope so. I think a report from Jack Smith is one place, but I think there are other places in the government where we may well see that. I also think getting as many people in place in positions having to do with ethics and accountability is hugely important. So the Senate actually confirmed a new director for the Office of Government Ethics last week. There are a large number of inspector general positions for which there are nominees who haven't been confirmed, or for which there are not yet nominees. We got to get those positions filled. Donald Trump can fire people in many of those positions, so it's not foolproof. But
and he did fire many when he was president last time.
He did, but it is like we were talking about with Jack Smith. It is making him do it, right?
Exactly.
Making him go to the effort of firing people, take the public hit, making him look partisan and power hungry, rather than just assuming he's going to do it and sort of leaving the field open for him to do whatever he wants. That's a really important step that can be taken in the next month or two to help to protect our government from abuse going forward.
Absolutely. So there's a number of inspector general positions that can be filled. I know the Democrats are working feverishly to pass more judges into the federal judiciary. Let's talk about this bill, HR 9495. It really is kind of terrifying. It could affect organizations like yours.
So this is a bill that makes it very easy for the Treasury Department to take away nonprofit status from organizations that are deemed to have aided terrorism. Which, of course, look, none of us support terrorism. None of us want organizations to be getting benefits and tax exemption for terrorist causes. That's a no-brainer. The problem with this legislation is twofold. One is that it doesn't really define what terrorism or assisting terrorism are. And so it gives the Secretary of the Treasury and the administration enormous power to define that however the heck they want. And so you could imagine a situation where people who are assisting immigrants are branded as assisting terrorists. You could certainly imagine a situation where organizations that are trying to point out corruption or unconstitutional acts or abuses from the administration or are portrayed as terrorists. And this can be a way to make it much more difficult for those kinds of organizations to operate. The second problem with it is that there's really no due process. There's not a process for organizations to say, no, we're not terrorists and we want a fair hearing and we want to be able to prove that. It has been, as you said, it's been very much in the playbook of totalitarian countries to make it illegal or very difficult for opposition groups or accountability groups to operate. And this seems like it could well be the first step in that direction. And that's a very dangerous thing going forward.
It absolutely is. Alrighty, Noah. Well, thank you so much. I am wishing you all of the power and strength and fortitude in the world to continue your very, very vital work moving forward. We will continue to shine a light on it. And thank you. Thank you for all the work you do.
Well, thank you for everything you're doing to shine a light on the places that desperately need light.
My pleasure. My pleasure. You can always find Lights On with Jessica Denson by subscribing to the Jessica Denson YouTube channel. So please subscribe there. If you want to find out more about me and my battle against Trump lawlessness, you can do that at thejessicadenson.com. Thank you, everybody, so much. And as always, especially now, let your light shine.